I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, warning to Hamas. President Donald Trump weighs in on the Middle East amid new developments in the push for peace in Ukraine. Ready for a downgrade. The White House reveals more of its plans to shutter the Department of Education, what it could mean for Catholic schools. Prayers for the Pope. As the Vatican releases its daily updates on the Holy Father, we take you to a church in Rome with close ties to his home country. Plus, blazing his own trail. We speak with Bishop Robert Barron about his wildly popular Word on Fire ministry. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thanks for being with us on the Feast of St. Colette. Our top story tonight, we are tracking new developments with the war in Ukraine and the war in the Middle East. President Donald Trump warns Hamas, saying, release all the hostages now or it is over for you. Plus, the Trump administration says positive talks between Washington and Ukraine could lead to the restoration of intelligence sharing. All this as European leaders hold an emergency summit. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, let's start with the Middle East tonight. The terror group Hamas does not appear to be persuaded. However, the White House and Hamas are having unprecedented direct talks, stepping away from a long-held U.S. policy. And earlier this afternoon, President Trump took questions in the Oval Office.
I put out a statement. It's sort of self-explanatory, I think, but somebody's going to have to get a lot rougher than they're getting. It's a shame.
At the State Department, the special presidential envoy for hostage affairs speaks out.
Or we're saying that it is not acceptable in any case to hold American citizens abroad wrongfully.
President Donald Trump earlier meeting with 8 now freed hostages who had been held captive in Gaza. This video posted online, one hostage thanking President Trump for his freedom while describing what he endured.
I was kidnapped on 7 October. My wife and my 2 daughters being murdered on the same day. I was held in captivity 491 days. I've been suffered there from starvation, violence, and humiliations daily.
Lawmakers on Capitol Hill also met with former hostages and family members.
Why I come here is to make sure they have Omri's story in mind, to know he's a shiatsu therapist, a gardener, devoted husband and father, to know that there is a human being behind the posters.
But Hamas reiterated it will only free the remaining Israeli hostages in exchange for a lasting ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff telling reporters outside the West Wing.
The president was pretty blunt. It's time for Hamas to start acting in a responsible and reasonable way. And we don't think that they have been doing that.
At the U.S. State Department, this assessment.
But one thing stays the same and is unmovable here, and it is the existence of Hamas as a factor on the ground in that region. It will be impossible to continue.
Meanwhile, in Brussels, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky meets with European Union leaders for a summit. The focus, beef up their own military defenses and make sure Ukraine will still be properly protected. This, as the Trump administration signaled that Europe must take care of its own security.
So today, Volodymyr, thank you for coming. It's a very important moment to show that we stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes.
Thank you very much.
Overnight, a Russian ballistic missile killed multiple people staying at a hotel in President Zelensky's hometown in Ukraine. The U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine and Russia says,
the death and destruction is what could be called industrial grade. After 3 years of war, combined casualties on both sides have surpassed 1 million individuals.
Also tonight, French President Macron has suggested starting talks about using France's nuclear deterrent to protect Europe from Russian threats. Moscow called that, quote, extremely confrontational. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
And joining us now is Clifford May, founder and president of Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Cliff, great to be with you. First, I want to start off with French President Emmanuel Macron. He's saying that he's open to the idea of France protecting European allies with its nuclear arsenal. I want to get your thoughts on that and how realistic is that offer?
Well, I'm not sure it's very realistic. I'm not sure exactly, and this is not this is not uncommon with Emmanuel Macron, exactly what it is he's suggesting. What the Europeans really need to do right now is they need to take leadership in terms of helping Ukraine defend its independence, its sovereignty, its homeland, its homes and people. There are a number of ways they can do that. One is simply with arms and with money for arms. One thing I suggest in a column I wrote this week for the Washington Times, that it's not originally my idea. Historian Neil Ferguson has mentioned it. There's about $300 billion of confiscated Russian funds being held in Europe right now. Those funds should be used for the rearmament of Ukraine and for reparations to the victims of Russian aggression.
Cliff, I know you also wrote in that op-ed piece in the Washington Times, you referenced that if Russia does succeed in winning this war, well, that could be a threat to America's national security interests. Explain that to us.
Look, if Russia and Putin should do what they've been trying to do for the past 3 years, which is conquer Ukraine, you have to figure they will use Ukrainian resources, human as well as natural resources, to continue to expand. I don't think Vladimir Putin will be satisfied simply with Ukraine. I think it will whet his appetite rather than satiate him. So now he has not only the natural resources, including such things as mineral resources, rare earths, all that, but he also has perhaps the most potent fighting force in Europe. Man for man, pound for pound, inch for inch, and that's the Ukrainians. You put bayonets in their backs and you point them towards NATO members. And those NATO members, we do have an obligation to defend. That's what NATO's all about. It's a collective security agreement. Now we've got some really serious troubles.
Yeah, and as we know, Cliff, President Trump does not want to see a forever war, as he said. Many European leaders are criticizing, though, for his relationship with Vladimir Putin, wanting to bring both sides basically to the table here to negotiate for peace. What do you think of this approach?
Well, look, if it were up to me, I would like to see Ukraine win. I'd like to see Putin lose, but I don't think that's very likely at this point. I think what President Trump has been all his life a deal maker. So he's trying to solve this dilemma by making a deal. And he figures, to make this deal, I need to be the mediator. I need to be the honest broker. To do that, I can't be seen as partnering with Vladimir Zelensky, and I can't be antagonizing Putin. In fact, I'm best off flattering him because he'll respond to that. So that's what he is trying to do. It's nice to talk about peace and a path to peace and all that. What we're really talking about, again, is a cessation of hostilities, ceasefire.
All right, Cliff, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much for your insights. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
2 days after putting 25% tariffs on goods from Mexico and Canada, President Trump has changed course. He granted a temporary exemption on items covered by the North American Trade Agreement. The delay will last until April 2nd. The announcement of the original tariffs put investors and business leaders on edge, worried about a trade war. Even with today's announcements, the markets closed down. The president explained his decision.
It's just a modification short term because I didn't want to hurt the American. It would have hurt the American car companies if I did that.
A federal judge is considering whether to unfreeze billions more in dollars in payments from USAID. This comes one day after the Supreme Court blocked the Trump administration's attempt to freeze the money. The White House says that it wants to review the contracts amid a push to eliminate waste. Plaintiffs say the work has already been completed and contractors are owed money. Following the Supreme Court ruling, lawyers from both sides were back in court today discussing a timeline to pay out the funds. Some good news for the U.S. economy. Jobless claims are down. The number of Americans filing for jobless benefits last week fell by 21,000 to 221,000, significantly lower than predicted. It is also a sign the labor market remains sturdy. However, some analysts expect layoffs ordered by the Department of Government Efficiency to impact the report in the coming weeks. So President Trump was expected to sign an executive order directing the education secretary to dismantle the department, but decided to hold off, at least for now. The move would fulfill a longtime campaign promise. Some lawmakers were quick to voice their concern. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has more.
The idea of President Trump closing the education department sent shockwaves through the halls of Congress. If he does so, Democrats say the president would be overstepping his boundaries.
I'm a former educator. I'm a former teacher. What you do want is an educated electorate, but not if you're Donald Trump and his cult-like members. They want citizens who are not educated.
Do we want to go back to 60 children in our kindergarten classes? Do we want to have an education system state by state where disabled children are maligned and are not able to be integrated in our classrooms? Do we want to have an education system where low-income college-bound students can't get aid from the federal government? Get out of here.
Some media outlets claim they obtained a draft of the order, which states in part, quote, the experiment of controlling American education through federal programs and dollars and the unaccountable bureaucrats those programs and dollars support has failed our children, our teachers, and our families. The White House claims those reports were false. But the White House adds even if the Department of Education is dismantled, some programs and funding would be retained and shifted to other agencies. Lawmakers' opinions cover the spectrum.
Oh, I'd get rid of it. Get rid of it. Grants, give them to the states and let the states do it. I mean, even every community has their own school board, right? We elect school board members here in May. And I think the local individual communities know what they want from their education system.
I think we ought to take on all departments. I think they ought to be more efficient. This money that we're spending didn't fall from heaven. We thank heaven for it, but it came out of people's pockets.
Going after the Department of Education means you're going after, the money that goes from the federal government to some of our neediest communities. It means some of the essential after-school programs, just a ton of programs that people don't even understand.
Congress would have to approve the closing of the Education Department through legislation. It would take 60 votes in the Senate, where Republicans hold only 53 seats. Bottom line, it's an issue which may be decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
All right, let's bring in Dr. Chris Everett-Jones, president of Newman University in Pennsylvania, a private Catholic university rooted in the Franciscan tradition. Dr. Jones, good to be with you. Let's talk more about this executive order that we mentioned is being put on hold for now. How do you think it could potentially impact the future of education? Your thoughts about the potential pros and cons?
Sure, Tracy, it's good to be with you. Certainly, I think the Department of Education impacts K through 12 significantly, primarily through the Title I program, Head Start, free and reduced lunch. But the Department of Education impacts almost 100% of college students. So in the area of Catholic higher education, 100% of our students at Newman University, for example, have to get their loans, their Pell Grants, if they're eligible, SEOG grants, all through the Department of Education. So it would have significant impact on access and on the ability for students to achieve an education if the department was eliminated and these programs were not stabilized and put in a situation, an agency that could continue to handle them well.
Yeah, and President Trump, he weighed in on this today. He was saying that he wants the states to take over their own education. Let's take a listen to this.
I want to bring the schools back to the states. And, I've said it 100 times. We're ranked at the bottom of the list, and yet we spend more. We're ranked number one for cost per student. We're ranked at the bottom of the list in education.
Dr. Jones, I know you are at the university level and have been there for about 40 years or so, but your take on this, what are your thoughts?
Sure. I think the states already control education. So I think that's important to note here. The Department of Education was put in place to help those students who are the most neediest in our society. So the Department of Education helps students with disabilities, helps funding with Title I. That is really important for the students who have economic issues. And so I think that the department is supporting the state system. Does it do it well and efficiently? Probably not. There's probably some particular things this department could certainly do better. Certainly that was true under the Biden administration and other previous administrations. However, it's really important as a Catholic and as a Catholic university that we note that there's a need for supporting those populations that are on the fringe. that are marginalized in our culture and society. We have to make sure that we're continuing to do that. And our mission at Newman, as a Catholic university in the Franciscan tradition, speaks directly to that. We certainly educate very marginalized students here at Newman. That's very important to our mission. Access to Catholic education is critical. And so the Department of Education helps us do that. It also helps students around the country who may not otherwise access particular programs such as free and reduced lunch or special education in their districts or areas, in K-12 also. So it's really important, I think, for the public to know those particular things about what the department does do in a positive way for those that are most in need.
And we're going to leave right there. Dr. Domes, great to be with you. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you so much.
The House has voted to censure the Democrat from Texas who disrupted President Trump's speech on Capitol Hill earlier this week. Congressman Al Green says that he has no regrets and understands why Speaker Mike Johnson removed him from the address.
The Speaker did what he was supposed to do. He did what he was supposed to do when we had the joint session of Congress. When I interrupted, the Speaker called it to my attention. He did it on multiple occasions. I have no reason in my heart to be upset with the Speaker.
Speaker Mike Johnson says that he took no pleasure in his actions and was only trying to maintain the great traditions on Capitol Hill. We have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including an update from the Vatican, the latest on the health of the Holy Father, and an audio message from Pope Francis himself. Plus, he was a special guest at President Trump's address to Congress. Bishop Robert Barron sits down with EWTN's Eric Rosales, his message for Catholic legislators. Welcome back. Just prior to the evening rosary for Pope Francis in St. Peter's Square, the faithful got the chance to hear the Holy Father's voice for the first time in weeks.
Agradezco de todo corazón las oraciones que hacen por mi salud desde la plaza. Los acompaño desde acá. Que Dios los bendiga y que la vida cuide. Gracias.
The Holy Father is about to mark 3 weeks in the hospital as he battles double pneumonia. He remains in stable condition and does not have any respiratory crises. The Vatican says his prognosis remains guarded. Another medical update is not expected to be released until Saturday. Also in Rome, the Argentine community has organized special rosaries every evening to pray for the Pope's health and recovery. EWTN Vatican contributor Valentina Di Donato has more.
Habemus Papam.
When Pope Francis was elected, he said that his brother cardinals had gone to the ends of the earth to find the new Bishop of Rome. The first pope from Latin America was referring to his homeland, Argentina. A connection that is very significant to many of his fellow Argentines. Since his hospitalization, the faithful have been gathering at Santa Maria Addolorata, the Argentine National Church of Rome, to pray the rosary for the Holy Father's health.
After Papa Francesco, after Pope Francis was hospitalized, Father Fernando asked us if we could stay after the Mass and pray with him the rosary. So we prayed together, and it gave us all a strength and a support. As we feel here in Rome, everyone feels close to the Pope.
Father Fernando Laguna, the rector of the National Church, is originally from near Buenos Aires in Argentina, just like the Pope. In an interview with EWTN, he explained that sharing the same homeland as Pope Francis creates a deep sense of closeness with the Holy Father of the Argentine community in Rome.
It is incredible having a pope who is not only Latin American, but Argentine, just like us, and not just an Argentinian pope, but this pope, Pope Francis, with everything he has prayed for, done, guided the church through, and shown, not only with his words, but with his gestures and actions.
Non soltanto con le sue parole, con i gesti e le opere.
Although Pope Francis has made over 45 international trips since his election, he has not returned to his homeland of Argentina.
I leave the decision in Pope Francis's heart. I would have liked for him to go, but he knows what's best. Last year he said that he had decided to go, but sometimes things just don't allow it.
Every night after Holy Mass, the faithful pray the Rosary for the Holy Father's recovery. Across Rome, concern for the Pope has united both locals and pilgrims in prayer. Many have been gathering outside the Gemelli Hospital and thousands of others in St. Peter's Square, where the Rosary has also been led by different cardinals every night for the past 2 weeks, bearing witness to the truth that though we are a universal church spread across the globe, we all have one Father, one Pope, in Rome.
Rome is a very particular city because we share two capitals, the capital of the state, of the nation state of Italy, and of the Universal Catholic Church. If you go this evening in Piazza San Pietro and St. Peter's Square, you will find people from the entire world, and there is no other place on earth that is universal like that.
In Rome, Valentina Di Donato, EWTN News Nightly.
In Iraq's ancient city of Ur, the faithful are praying the Stations of the Cross for Pope Francis. Normally, this rite is performed on Fridays during Lent, but at the Ibrahim al-Khalil Church, they made an exception. The area is the home to one of the world's oldest Christian communities. It is traditionally understood to be the birthplace of the prophet Abraham, who is believed to be the father of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. On his historic visit to Iraq in 2021, Pope Francis held an interreligious prayer at the site, which influenced the decision to build the church on that very spot. And in South Korea, a Catholic church was damaged after a fighter jet accidentally dropped bombs in a residential area. Around 8 people were injured and several homes were damaged after the mistake during a joint military drill with the United States. The city's mayor says that he extends his deepest sympathies to those impacted. The incident took place in a location close to the heavily armed border with North Korea. Spain's government is considering a measure to make abortion a constitutional right. This comes as the Minister of Equality says the proposal would protect the freedom of women. She also adds that sufficient consensus on the matter is, quote, enormously complex. Spain is roughly 60% Catholic. Up next on EWTN News Nightly, with more than 1 million viewers on YouTube, Bishop Robert Barron pushes to bring the youth back to the church in a unique way. Eric Rosales has that story. Tributes are pouring in for Nigeria following the news that a Catholic priest was murdered on Ash Wednesday. His diocese says that earlier this week, 45-year-old Father Sylvester was kidnapped from his home. He was then killed in the early hours yesterday. The head of this diocese says in part, quote, Father Sylvester was a dedicated servant of God who worked selflessly in the vineyard of the Lord, spreading the message of peace, love, and hope. He is in our prayers. Well, Bishop Robert Barron attended President Donald Trump's address to Congress earlier this week. His Excellency was the guest of West Virginia Congressman Riley Moore, a Catholic. Prior to the speech, though, Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales had the opportunity to sit down with the Bishop of the Winona-Rochester Diocese about his very popular ministry.
Your Word on Fire ministry has changed the lives of hundreds and thousands of people around the world. It's a new order that you want to bring to the church. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the needful thing today in the church is this outreach to the unaffiliated. I think it's the central problem we have, is the number, especially of young people, who are disaffiliating from the church. A lot of my ministry has been focused on that, is to appeal through truth and beauty, to bring the great tradition forward, and to try to draw people back to the church. What I didn't want was this ministry simply to end with me. I thought I wanted to go on after I'm gone. And so could there be an order, I wondered, that would carry on this charism of using the media in an intelligent way, in a beautiful way, reaching out to the unaffiliated? That's my hope for the new order. So we'll see. It's an experiment. You know, we'll see who comes, if they can stay, and if the order has staying power, we'll see in time. But that's my hope for it.
You're one of the most well-known bishops in the world. 1.85 million viewers on YouTube alone. Many of your talks deal with politics, and this is such a contentious place up here. What message do you have for practicing Catholics who are in the legislature?
Well, for those who are here, I'd say, don't leave your faith at the door. I mean, we don't impose the faith. John Paul always said we don't impose, we propose. But they should bring their faith into the public square. It's not the case that we're to sequester faith simply into the privacy of our conscience. No, it's a public reality, and it should inform the decisions that they make here. I'm with John Courtney Murray and that great natural law tradition. There's a way that we can use the Catholic tradition itself as a point of contact with other points of view. But don't leave your faith at the door. Let it inform the decisions you make here. That would be a steady message I would have for legislators.
Your Excellency, God bless you.
God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night, and God bless.